This documentary explores moments in history when reality became more terrifying than fiction. You will witness real events, recorded, documented, and verified, where ordinary people faced unimaginable suffering. In this video, we'll examine incidents where cities fell silent overnight, where families vanished without warning, and where survival depended on cruel chance. You will hear about a single decision that led to thousands of deaths. What you are about to witness actually happened, and its consequences still haunt the world today. Welcome to Mr. Unsolved Files. We bring similar videos every week, so let's begin. In the late 15th century, Spain's newly united monarchy initiated a campaign to enforce religious conformity. In 1478, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella empowered inquisitors, most notoriously Tomás de Torquemada, to seek out heretics. Trials were perfunctory. Evidence was scarce, and confessions were extracted under the iron grip of torture. Those accused, often Jews who had converted to Christianity, conversos, Muslims under pressure to convert, moriscos, or anyone holding heterodox beliefs, were thrown into damp dungeons. The screech of legal torture devices and the scent of burning flesh became an atmosphere of terror. Over centuries, about 150,000 people were tried, and 3,000 to 5,000 were executed, mostly by burning at the stake. Tens of thousands more were forced to publicly repent, pay heavy fines, or go into exile. Entire communities were uprooted. In 1492 alone, some 40,000 Jews were driven from Spain. By 1834, it was formally abolished, but its memory endured. Chilling reminders of a time when faith was enforced by fire. Arbeit macht frei. Work shall set you free. Behind this mocking sign over Auschwitz's gate lay a carnage beyond imagining. During World War II, Nazi Germany carried out the systematic murder of 6 million Jews. Families were rounded up into ghettos, herded into cattle cars, then herded again into gas chambers. Flames licked the walls of crematoria as the SS forced victims' final breaths from their lungs. In Hitler's final solution, Jewish lives were treated as mere statistics, mothers, fathers, and infants numbered and disposed like wood. The killings were not limited to Jews. Soviet prisoners of war, Polish intellectuals, Roma or Gypsies, the disabled, Jehovah's Witnesses, gays, and others were slaughtered in mass shootings in camps. In all, millions more perished under Nazi terror. The evidence is overwhelming. Piles of eyeglasses, suitcases, and shoes collected from victims, mountains of ashes from crematoria, and countless photographs of hollow-eyed survivors. When Soviet troops finally liberated Auschwitz and other camps in 1945, they found scene after scene of horror. Emaciated prisoners and scores of dead sprawled everywhere. The Holocaust's legacy is etched in every empty synagogue seat and abandoned concentration camp barrack. It stands as an eternal warning. Civilization must never forget the smoke, the ash, and the innocent lives lost to unchecked hatred. 8. Rwandan Genocide, 1994. Cut down by machetes in the morning, buried in mass graves by nightfall. In 1994 Rwanda, a brutal ethnic war erupted. On April 6th, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down, triggering an extremist campaign against the minority Tutsi. For 100 days, Hutu militias, civilians, and soldiers slaughtered their neighbors in cold blood. Nearly 1 million men, women, and children, mostly Tutsis and moderate Hutus, were massacred. The brutality defies description. Men with machetes went house to house. Whole families were hacked to death in their homes. Victims were forced to flee to churches and stadiums for protection, only to be slaughtered there. Women were raped repeatedly. Newborn babies dashed against trees. In Kigali and villages across the hills, smoke rose daily from burning houses and bodies. The Rwandan Patriotic Front eventually halted the killings in July 1994, but not before up to 90% of Rwanda's Tutsi population was wiped out. International peacekeepers watched helplessly as the slaughter unfolded, their radio static filled with Hutu propagandists urging murder. When soldiers finally arrived, they found piles of corpses in rivers and dirt courtyards. The once green hills of Rwanda were stained red. By the genocide's end, Rwanda was littered with makeshift memorials of crosses or stones, each marking a mass grave. The world declared never again, but for Rwanda, the silence that followed was as deep as the wounds left behind. 7. Partition of India, 1947. Imagine trains full of bodies and refugees pushing beyond the horizon. In the summer of 1947, British India was carved into India and Pakistan. It was hurried, arbitrary, and disastrous. Within weeks, 14 million Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs found themselves on the wrong side of a new border. Panic and violence erupted. Armed mobs roamed villages at dawn, looting and killing their former neighbors. In Punjab and Bengal, rivers ran red. Eyewitnesses saw convoys of refugees halted at rail stations where wounds had become festering. Trains that once carried vacationers now arrived at midnight packed with charred corpses and orphans clutching nothing. Over 3 million people died in the carnage, shot, stoned, or starved. Women were kidnapped or brutally raped. Entire families vanished. Stories emerged of children ripped from their parents and buried alive, and of brothers turned against brothers. The great cities of Amritsar, Lahore, and Calcutta overflowed with makeshift hospitals and morgues. By August's end, one of history's largest migrations had left the subcontinent in ruins. Cowed soldiers and onlookers buried the dead in mass graves by the hundreds. When Prime Minister Nehru finally urged peace, the relief came not in time to save the millions lost. Today, monuments and refugees' tales in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh still echo with the partition's bloodshed. It was freedom tainted by horror, a once peaceful land scarred by human savagery. 6. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351. Starting in 1347, the Black Death swept across Europe like a shadow of doom. Brought by merchants from Asia, the plague bacterium, Yersinia pestis, spread quickly through crowded medieval cities. In just 4 years, it killed an estimated 25 million people in Europe, roughly 1/3 of the continent's population. Victims fell ill with terrible speed, fever, chills, and agonizing pain. The body reacted with blackened swellings called buboes in the groin and armpits and violent coughing of blood. Many died within days, often alone at home or in makeshift pest houses. Churches rang bells for the dead all morning and afternoon. In some towns, the living left town walls unguarded. Too few remained alive to bury the bodies on the other side. Yet, even in the midst of this horror, superstition flourished. Flagellants whipped themselves in public atonement. Jews and lepers were scapegoated and massacred. By 1351, the Black Death had largely run its course, but its impact endured. The art and literature that followed were forever haunted by mortality. Europe emerged smaller and poorer, its psyche scarred. The Black Death remains one of history's greatest catastrophes, a grim warning of nature's power over humanity. 5. The Great Chinese Famine, 1959 to 1961. A banquet hall with no guests, only empty bowls. In 1958, Chairman Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, compelling peasants to abandon their farms for backyard steel production. The result was catastrophic. The grain fields were neglected and harvests cratered. Local officials, under pressure to please Beijing, fabricated record harvests and handed over the food they did have. By spring 1959, famine had descended on a third of China's provinces. Starving families scavenged for roots, children ate bark and leaves for sustenance. Over the next 3 years, an estimated 30 million Chinese people died of starvation. Scenes of horror played out daily. Skeletal villagers wandered roads in search of grain, fruit trees were stripped bare, and corpses of the long dead lay unburied along the Yangtze. In some counties, desperate parents killed their own children to end their suffering. The central government denied the crisis for years, sending grain exports abroad even as people perished at home. Only after Mao's death did China begin to relax communal rules and import food. By then, the famine had run its deadly course. Decades later, China's leadership still treats the Great Famine as a sensitive secret. Yet the terrible photographs survive. Emaciated bodies, crying old women beside empty ponds, and hunger etched into every face. This man-made tragedy is remembered as the deadliest famine in human history, a lesson in the perils of ideological zeal trumping human need. 4. Chernobyl nuclear disaster, 1986. It was a normal night in Pripyat, until a blinding flash shattered the silence. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl power plant ruptured in a roar of fire and steam. A radioactive plume billowed over Ukraine and across Europe. Firefighters and plant workers rushed into the inferno, unaware of the lethal danger. 2 of them died that night, and 28 more succumbed within weeks to acute radiation poisoning. In total, about 30 plant workers and firefighters lost their lives from radiation exposure in the months after the accident. Nearby Pripyat, a model Soviet city of 49,000, was evacuated in panic. Citizens fled their beloved homes with only minutes' warning. In the evacuation center, children's toys and warm coats lay on cots, abandoned mid-flight. The reactor, now glowing with invisible, deadly energy, was eventually encased in a concrete sarcophagus. A 30-kilometer exclusion zone became a radioactive no-man's land, where forests grew wild and wolves roamed empty streets. Over the years, few off-site deaths were directly attributed to Chernobyl, but scientists have documented thousands of cases of radiation-related thyroid cancer from contaminated milk and produce. The ruin of Chernobyl stands today as a dark emblem of modern catastrophe. Once a symbol of Soviet progress, Reactor 4 is now a rusted ruin frozen in time. A Geiger counter clicks relentlessly. A ruined Ferris wheel creaks in the wind. The silence is a warning. The price of nuclear disaster is paid in invisible poison, and the ghost town of Pripyat endures to remind us of human error's consequences. 3. Jonestown Massacre, 1978. This is your great leader speaking. The hour is at hand. On a muggy morning in Guyana, cult leader Jim Jones gathered his followers for a final ceremony in their jungle commune of Jonestown. "Drink the Kool-Aid," they chanted, but it was no joke. Jones had ordered a fruit drink laced with cyanide. Moments earlier, Congressman Leo Ryan had been gunned down at a nearby airstrip while investigating cult abuses. Now, at the behest of their paranoid leader, over 900 People's Temple members, men, women, and children, swallowed death in a single gulp. Within hours, the settlement was silent. More than 300 victims were children under 17. Bodies lay in rows inside the temple and in the dirt yard beyond. Mothers clutched empty bottles, babies slumped lifeless in their cribs. The massacre had been coldly planned. Broadcast messages blared horror over the PA system, and armed guards surrounded the compound. When it was over, the once vibrant commune looked like a grave. In the sun's harsh glare, poisonous Kool-Aid stained the earth. Jim Jones lay dead with a gunshot wound to the head. Jonestown became the largest mass suicide in history. Its haunting final image, hundreds of silent bodies in the jungle, the promise of paradise twisted into a killing field. 2. Aztec human sacrifices, 15th through 16th century. In the heart of the Aztec Empire, human life was currency for the gods. Conquistador Hernán Cortés wrote that when he saw the ritual sacrifices in Tenochtitlan in 1521, priests were cutting open living victims' chests and tossing their still-beating hearts into the air. The sight made the Spaniards shudder. "It is the most terrible and frightful thing," one observer later said. Modern archaeology confirms this horror. In excavations at the Great Temple of Tenochtitlan, scientists uncovered bones showing victims had been beheaded, dismembered, and roasted for ritual cannibalism. For the Aztecs, the ritual had cosmic meaning. They believed the sun god, Huitzilopochtli, demanded an unending supply of blood to rise each day. So on steamy summer mornings, captured warriors and even volunteers climbed the pyramid steps. Priests, wielding flint knives, sliced open their victims' bodies in one motion. Screams echoed as hearts were torn out, faces turned to stone by blood and reverence. Whole crowds of priests, warriors, and nobles watched as life's crimson gift was offered to the sky. The legacy of Tenochtitlan is carved in stone and bone, a civilization built on the sacrifice of thousands. The sun rose again, but the memory of those sacrificial altars still stains the pages of history. If you're finding this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly motivates us to create more such in-depth content. Each video takes a great deal of research, time, and hard work, and your engagement helps us keep going. Now, let's move forward. Unit 731, Japanese World War II Human Experimentation. In the frozen wastes of Manchuria, a secret facility operated beneath the cover of night. In 1936, Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii built Unit 731 near Harbin to wage biological warfare against the Chinese. Behind its innocuous name lurked a temple of torture. Thousands of hapless prisoners, Chinese soldiers, civilians, even Allied POWs, were treated as expendable logs. Doctors injected them with plague and anthrax, released fleas and rots to spread disease, and vivisected them alive. In some experiments, men infected with syphilis were forced to rape women so doctors could watch the infection spread. And pregnant women were impaled on stakes while their fetuses were still living. By 1945, this hellish lab had claimed many thousands of lives. After Japan's surrender, the operators destroyed documents and revealed their crimes only in exchange for immunity. No one was punished. The black stain of Unit 731 remains a stark reminder that in war, science can be twisted into unspeakable cruelty. If you liked this video, you'll love America's Top 10 Most Horrific Crimes, a chilling deep dive into real cases that shocked the nation, where truth is far more terrifying than fiction. Please like, share, and subscribe for more.